fourth episode of the Riley Hangout. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, the real Mark Golden on Twitter, and tonight we have a very special guest, only our second guest ever on the O'Reilly Hangout. We have Justin DiBiase. Justin, how are you tonight?
Doing great. I'm excited to be on the O'Reilly here. It's a great show. I come from the Horseman Hangout to your home here, so thanks for having me.
I want to interject something. Mr. Justin here is our third guest. We had Mr. Lane, sir, and we had Ryan too. So Justin is our third.
Oh
guest.
yes, thank you.
Yes. Well, congratulations are in order, Justin.
Thank you very much. I'm actually sitting here with my fiance right now. So.
Wow, that's great. I'm sure she's gonna love to hear you talking about wrestling for an hour.
Yeah, actually, she's looking up wedding stuff right now. So
she's all set.
I was like, just give me. I'll get right back to the wedding stuff. Give me like a half an hour, 45 minutes. That's all I need. So.
Well, let's just face it. You can give your 10 cents, but she's gonna pick what she's gonna pick. I think that's.
Yeah, that's pretty much true. I just gotta. We have some people watching on the in the internet asking me right now. Are you on? Yes, I am. There you go.
Oh, cool. I wonder who those people are. Probably. What is this program you host? What is this again? What is this particular?
That'd be the Horseman Hangouts, Tuesday nights, live on YouTube at 9 p.m.
Ah, okay.
Very good show.
You know that show, all right, sir.
So, Justin, have you got the chance to watch Raw yet? I know you were out of power for a while.
Well, let me tell you, Comcast is finally here. They came yesterday. I have 2 HD boxes now. Monday, I wasn't able to watch Raw live, but I did go on the website at work and saw some of the highlights. So I'm aware of the storylines. I've seen some of the clips, but I did not get to watch it in its entirety. So that's where I stand now. But I finally, it's been 2 weeks, but I finally have my cable back. I have my Roku box is hooked up, so now I can watch the network whenever I want it. So I'm a happy camper now.
So what happened? Your power blew out everything, or?
No, what happened was I moved, from Pennsylvania back to New Jersey.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I was going to get it the week before, but my fiance had to work. She's a nurse. She had to work. None of us could be there, so we had to reschedule Comcast coming, and they rescheduled it to yesterday. That's what happened.
Right.
Man, I'll tell you what.
Comcast is a bitch to get to your house. They take forever.
It's not just them. If you break an appointment with them, I mean, it might be days again until you get another shot. And that sucks. It's not just them. It's all cable companies.
Yeah, and the 4th of July weekend didn't help because nobody was working on that day, and the day before no one was working. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't miss much of Raw. The highlights. If all you saw were highlights, that was probably all you needed to see. That was just an abysmal show. It was not good at all.
I didn't think it was a bad show at all. I thought some of the wrestling was good. I thought some of the wrestling was bad as well, but overall, I thought like the first hour was good. This is what I normally think happens with Raw. Normally the first hour is really, really good. The second hour is and then the third hour is either really, really good or it's really, really bad. So usually they only have sometimes a good strong hour and a half of programming.
Usually you get something good at the 9 o'clock, the top of the hour. They'll throw something good on there. I remember 9 o'clock used to be when Punk was around, like the CM Punk promo time. I'd always be sure to tune in, the 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, it was either Punk or Triple H or somebody. But nowadays it seems like, I guess because the ratings, they try to hit those 9 o'clock, 10 o'clocks, those 15-minute ratings clips. But lately, I haven't been feeling that. But
well, yeah, but Daniel Bryan was on Steve Austin's podcast talking about if when they go to the show on Monday afternoons and they see where their placement on the card is, everybody's excited to be in the first hour and everybody's excited to be in the last hour. But in that middle hour, if you're booked in the middle hour, everybody's like, oh no, because that's the one that people aren't tuning in as much for the middle. They're either tuning in at the beginning or they're tuning in to catch the end.
Can I ask you guys? I saw on the Twitter sphere that my good guy I like to watch, Kofi Kingston. Did he actually score a victory on Raw?
2 weeks in a row on Cesaro. 2 weeks in a row.
Can't believe that. I mean, he's always a great worker, but he never gets wins. But
what happened with Kofi's pushback? Like, do you guys remember when he put Orton through the table at MSG?
Yeah.
like they were going to turn him heel, I think, back then. I don't know what the heck happened. I don't know if Orton got in his way. I don't know if some politics got involved. I'm not sure. Do you guys know anything about that?
I don't know about that particular time, but I think the reason that he got two clean pinfall victories over Cesaro in a row, back-to-back weeks, I think that's definitely leading up to this Intercontinental Battle Royal, which everybody kind of assumes that Cesaro is going to win, and that kind of throws a little bit of drama in there to have Cesaro pin him, or Kofi pin him, but it doesn't matter. It's an over-the-top rope Battle Royal. A pinfall win, it shouldn't really, it shouldn't have any bearing on that, you know?
Here's our argument we always say. How much do belts matter? Because Cesaro having lost 2 weeks in a row, does that make him that much significantly weaker looking? Even if he does win the belt coming up here, will people the two losses supersede him winning the belt? Is it a really bad thing having him lose like this?
I think it could lead to things down the road where, hey, Cesaro won the Intercontinental Battle Royal, he's the Intercontinental Champion. Kofi should get the first shot because, hey, 2 weeks ago he pinned him 2 weeks in a row. So there's that. It gives an automatic number one contender down the line. And I think people say those two middle belts, the Intercontinental and U.S. title, are neglected, but lately they seem to have been getting more emphasis on them, more focus.
Right. And we also had a special guest on Raw. We had Bret the Hitman Hart. I really don't understand why he came out. He really didn't say much of anything. He just came out and, I don't really even remember what he said, but it wasn't much of it all.
Was it in Ottawa on Monday?
No, Montreal.
Montreal, yeah.
Montreal.
Yeah. That was the home of he said he's glad to be back in Montreal, and, that was the home of the
if he had a chance to wrestle, he'd wrestle there. That's what he said.
And he did the annual or the weekly Sandow segment, right? Is that what happened?
Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah.
Damien Sandow came dressed like Bret the Hitman Hart or Bret the Hitman Sandow or something.
Yeah, and then,
are you guys still in with the Sandow stuff? Is it still funny to you guys?
I don't know what the hell they're doing with this, having him come out as different people every week. I kind of liked it the first couple weeks, but I don't know if they're going to continue this. I don't know if I'm going to quite like it.
Yeah. This year's going down the path of Santino Marella, where he's becoming more of a sideshow and not. His character always was kind of goofy, but I thought he was a pretty decent worker, and now he's just the sideshow. Yeah.
He always kind of reminded me of the genius Lanny Poffo a little bit.
Yeah.
With his he'd come out and put the crowd down with his
genius.
So, But what WWE does that's strange is sometimes they will book a segment that is an inside joke to the people in the office. The majority of the audience doesn't get it. So maybe Sandow does funny impressions, and Vince thinks they're humorous, so he goes out and does it every week on TV. But the crowd is kind of indifferent to it. It's goofy. I mean, every time he comes out and does an impression, I honestly, every single time, if he's out there doing an impression, I just wait to hear the glass shatter. And Stone Cold come on and give him a stunner. It's almost every time, because that was something he would have done when he was just the GM or the sheriff in town or whatever. Somebody like Sandow would have gotten a stunner by now, for sure.
Yeah. That would be pretty cool.
What's wrong, Justin?
No, nothing. I don't know if I'm. Usually, if I'm the host, I can just jump in here, but I don't want to take your guys' thunder here.
You're the guest.
Say whatever you need to say.
See, on this show, we're different than the Horseman Hangout because
I did have something. Because as I was talking about Sandow, I threw out Santino Marella's name, and I was reading on.
He was gonna. Yes, I was gonna mention that he was gonna he retired from.
Yes.
Ring competition. What is your thoughts on this, Justin?
I mean, me being an Italian American, I always liked Santino. I thought he was humorous. Decent wrestler, kind of goofy. The whole, that never did it for me. But I'm gonna. I mean, do you guys know, or do you think he'll still be around the company? Will he still be doing segments?
I don't think he will be. I think he's focusing on his gymnasium or whatever he opened up.
Yeah.
He opened up some kind of MMA, jiu-jitsu, wrestling studio, something like that.
I guess he's just going to run it because he can't, with his neck, I think, is the issue why he can't wrestle anymore, I think.
It is. He's had several neck injuries. No, here's the thing. I think that no one can deny his in-ring work was
Yeah.
wasn't great, but his character was entertaining, and when he comes out, no matter what he did, the crowd seemed to always be behind him. And if you remember when he first started, he was pulled from the crowd in Italy, and beat Umaga, because Umaga challenged anyone in the audience. That was a good way to introduce him, I thought.
Yeah.
And he won the title. They were treating him like he was just a fan, and he actually was acting like that for a while. Like, oh, I was just in the crowd there in Italy. That was always in wrestling. That was a good idea.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah, but no, I think that they will keep Santino around. Yeah, sure. Maybe not every single week, but I don't think he'll be gone forever. Of course not. No, he'll be around.
You know what a good role would be if,
pre-show.
Maybe have him as a GM or something. I don't know.
No, I like what Justin just said on that pre-show thing. They're not like they do before Raw and after, and SmackDown and after, and before the pay-per-views and after. Yeah. He could do that, sure. Him and Booker T. Maybe a GM character. I think honestly though, if Bad News Barrett's out with a bad shoulder for months, he would make a great GM to come out and ruin everybody's fun by having bad news for you. Bad news for the faces. I think he'd be a great GM, Sando. But no, here's the thing, Justin. On our show, our guests get to talk as much as they want. You can jump in whenever you want. Go ahead.
Bring up whatever you want.
Yes. Unlike other shows online, you can do that without getting dirty looks.
Is that a shot at me and my show?
No, not at all. Not at all. Sometimes I would watch them back, and if I would be a bit long-winded at times or interrupting people, I get some eyebrow raising, and I see it, but that's okay. I get it. Because you guys only go an hour, so there's limited time.
Yeah, and there's got to have some structure to the show, but this is a good format also. We're all having fun here, so.
Yes, and I think you cannot deny, and you were the first one to have me on your show, you cannot deny that I have added something to your show as well when you have me on as a guest.
Both of you guys are very knowledgeable when it comes to, sports entertainment and entertaining. You've done good promo manias, so that's what I think about that right there. So, that's as much as I'll comment on that issue.
So did you have anything you wanted to talk about? Anything else? I know you brought up the Santino thing. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
Well, I guess we are hurtling towards SummerSlam here. I know
we have Battleground kind of in the way.
Yeah, true. Did they? What's the card for that so far?
We have Bray Wyatt, Chris Jericho, definite.
There's the Intercontinental title Battle Royal.
There's the World Heavyweight WWE title match, the Fatal 4-Way.
Yeah, and I believe Paige against AJ.
Is it Paige against AJ?
Yeah.
Or are they tagging up right now?
No, it's Paige against AJ in a rubber match for the women's title, or Divas, whatever.
I thought they were making an alliance this past Monday.
It's telling you what I read.
Okay.
Emma is still with the company, correct?
Yep.
Emma is still with the company, yes, but I don't know what's going on with her. I don't know what we will see of her punishment from her 5-finger discounting.
They'll humiliate her in some sketches, and they'll have her get beat a lot.
You said a couple weeks ago, Mark, maybe they'll have her steal some dude's boots or something.
Yes, they should do that. They should have stuff come up missing in the locker room, and someone come out bitching, part of my wrestling gear is missing, and some diva could come out and say, my weaves are gone, or something. or Emma wrestles a match and she hooks the tie. Oh, she stole another one. Yes, they should take that. Her because everybody knows it. You can't do something like that, and the majority of the fans don't know. They should definitely turn that into some sort of a storyline for her, for sure.
What do you think, Justin?
I read the story. If they do make it into a storyline, a lot of times WWE does that. They take real life and they turn it into a storyline. I was just actually listening to Opie and Anthony on the way in, in the morning when I was driving to work, and they had on, it was a rerun, and they had on CM Punk and Paul Heyman talking about when Punk dumped out the ashes of Paul Bearer, using how they used Paul Bearer's death and turned it into an angle, which Paul Bearer's family and kids were okay with. But so I could see them doing that with them also.
Yeah. Well, you mean of course it was a repeat because now it'll just be Opie.
Right.
Well,
Anthony got fired, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys hear about that? What happened? Did he?
Let Justin talk about this because I've never really heard their program other than a couple of things on
either.
YouTube.
Yeah, I've been listening I've SiriusXM. I've been listening to their program for 3 or 4 years now. Actually, they do talk here and there about pro wrestling, and one of their the third mic on there, or the fourth mic, Sam Roberts, you guys may know, does a lot of pro wrestling stuff.
Yeah, I've heard of a few of his interviews. Yeah.
Oh, Sam? Yeah. Sam's on there? Yeah, he does good interviews.
Yeah, he's a full time. He works on there. He's a talent on air for them. Yeah. And he goes to a lot of shows and stuff. I think he's been trying to get a job with WWE, but they haven't hired him yet. So he's stuck.
He's very good. He's a very good interviewer. I like his. I've seen many of his stuff on YouTube.
He's knowledgeable.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What happened was, if you know Anthony Cumia, you hear him. He speaks his mind, and he has certain opinions on race, certain opinions on gun control, things like that. He was in New York City over the weekend, and he was taking photos of random people, and he apparently took some photos of a black woman, just randomly, and she responded by punching him because she was angry that he did that, assaulted him, and he was calling her all kinds of names and stuff, and then he went on Twitter and kind of talked about what happened and said how crazy she was, and she was lucky he didn't shoot her because he had a gun on him. And he didn't call her any of the the racial names, but he was saying how she was a savage and stuff like that. And SiriusXM basically fired for his Twitter outrage.
Okay, here's the difference. Here's where it's wrong. He should have never done it on Twitter. He could have used his show, which is, and I love Stern, Howard Stern show. I had Sirius since it started, since he started on there. Since 2005, 2006. That it is uncensored radio. He could have gone on there and aired his grievance about the situation, had made for funny radio. He could have saved it for the air. The fact that he went on Twitter, it's not everybody's on Twitter. Not everybody subscribes to Sirius. And he kept it on the air, they would have never fired him for that. Because you should hear some of the stuff that's on Stern with Sal Governale and stuff. If they don't fire Sal, they would have never fired him for that.
No, I disagree. I think if you know the show, they had a personal vendetta against Anthony Cumia. They didn't want him on the show. I think the management didn't want him on there, and he does that on Twitter all the time. It was a huge shock to me because he's always on Twitter talking about race and guns and just doing stuff like that. So
they were just using it as an excuse.
Yeah, it seemed like they just picked that one situation and they said, all right, now you're fired. I really think it was a buildup of things. I think there was more to the story than just that. I think they just used that. But he's always doing that.
Okay. So this wasn't the first time that he's gone on a rant on there?
I actually think he's great on Twitter. I had to unfollow him twice because he just does this all the time and I can't read all of it. It just fills up my timeline.
Just like a constant stream of post all the way down.
Yeah.
I don't like people that do that. I unfollow people if they send more, sometimes it's okay to send multiple tweets out, but once you send like 25 in like a 10-minute span, that's a little much.
Yeah. Okay, well, if that's not the first time he's done it, then it looks like they were going to use his next, and as a manager, I kind of get that. If you're looking to get rid of somebody, you use the slightest infraction to do it. If it's within reason, you will.
Right.
Go ahead, Justin.
No, the show is coming back on Monday morning, and they said that Opie will be there with Jim Norton. So, and their contract expires in October. So I totally expect that they won't be renewed in October, and they're just going to play out the rest of their contract. And they're going to, what I've heard is they're going to do a on-demand thing where they're going to do an online show and they have a big fan base. They're going to have people do it that way. So.
Yeah. Are you a Howard Stern fan, Justin?
I never really listened to Howard Stern. I mean, when I was younger, I used to watch the show on E, but nah, not really. They make fun of him on O&A show sometimes.
Yeah, I know, but you got to wonder, like, why?
They're very similar. I mean, I know Stern. Without Stern, there'd be no Opie and Anthony show. I acknowledge that. So I don't hate Stern. I just never really listened to him.
I was always a Stern guy. I was always a fan. I'm not a big fan. In fact, the show has changed so much in the last 4 years or so that I canceled my subscription. I don't even.
Oh yeah, they talk about that on O&A about ever since he married Beth. Is that her name? Where he's
Yeah.
become a little softer, and they always make fun of him because he's always doing the. He wants to adopt all the cats. They're like cat people. Nothing wrong with cats, but just he's like
Yeah,
different
North
guy.
Shore Animal League. Yeah, and Howard and Beth are big supporters of the North Shore Animal League. But why would a show, any show, whether you're talking about Tom Likas or Phil Hendry or Opie and Anthony or whoever else, Stern, whoever, why would you waste your airtime?
Don Imus.
Imus, whoever. Why would you waste your airtime bashing another show that's similar to yours? Like, why would they care? Howard's not going on the air every day ranting and raving about Opie and Anthony. Why do they hate him so bad? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I don't listen to either one of these shows.
No, Justin does. I'm asking Justin. Justin, why do they hate him?
They really don't, and they said it. They don't hate Howard. There's just things that's them. They just come at people and they like picking on people. And Howard's the top dog. Howard makes more money than they have, as he has more viewers. So it's just they're taking shots at him. But everybody knows Howard made it, and they're the second dog. So I don't think it's anything more than that. And they kind of make fun of Stern because he makes all that money at SiriusXM, and what does he work like? 20% of the time they have.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. He's taken, and when it first started, it was on 4 days a week.
And he's on a TV show, and he's on.
Yeah, he's a judge on America's Got Talent or something. I
actually really like him on that show. I have watched that show. He's very good on it.
Never watched it, and I never will. And to me, that is something that you talk about Jump the Shark, which John Hine is a personality on the Stern Show. And John Hine created a website called Jump the Shark, and it lists all the TV shows or personalities who have jumped the shark, and it is in reference to the Happy Days episode when Fonzie drove his motorcycle at the beach over sharks. So any show that
in the water was a 2-part series. Yeah.
Any show that like when it became any show that becomes lame. The episode that it jumped the shark, so to speak, that it screwed itself up. So I think Howard jumped the shark. Well, anyway, John Hine sold his website to TV Guide, and now he's a millionaire. But anyway, Howard kind of jumped the shark by joining a reality show, game show, America's Got Talent. To me, he's not the same anymore as he once was.
Well, they can't be on top forever, Got to move over at some point.
Yeah. I gotta say, have you guys ever been to Atlantic City?
I was there when I was a kid. I was not there as an adult to enjoy it. I went to Wildwood. My parents went to Atlantic City to enjoy the adult life that night, but I was at Wildwood as a kid. It was neat, but again, I would like to go again as an adult. I was in Vegas as an adult, and I think Atlantic City would be equally as fun.
Yeah, Steven, have you ever been?
I have been through Atlantic City. I've never been. I've driven through Atlantic City. I have not.
Hey, I'm going to see Dana Carvey tomorrow night with my parents and my brother and my fiance tomorrow night. So thought I'd throw that out. You guys are familiar with Dana Carvey, the Dana Carvey Show?
Of course.
Yeah, funny guy, great stand-up, good impersonations and stuff. So should be fun.
I loved his bit on the 1986 comic relief, chopping broccoli. You know that bit?
Yeah. No, wait. Actually, I'm not sure if I've seen that one. But I
he
have.
he was just talking about how rock acts will sometimes hit the piano and do this long speech about something that's kind of lame, and he was talking about look it up on YouTube. Dana Carvey chopping broccoli.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's funny.
Guys, hate to do this, but getting late and I got to get up early tomorrow, and I'm gonna look at some wedding stuff now. So
Yeah, you gotta go check. You gotta go select some China patterns. We understand.
yeah.
Okay.
Let me just give my sign off here though.
Yes, let's hear it.
Thank both of you for the invite. You guys are good guests on our Horseman Hangout. But let me tell you something, okay? You can take shots at the Horseman Hangout. You can take shots at the Four Horsemen. Let me tell you, you will never, ever break the Four Horsemen. And you guys are guests, you're great guests. But take shots at anybody on the Horsemen, whether it be my brother or Mr. Lane or Mr. Zorzi. Let me tell you that we are strong, we are proud, and we will never, ever break up.
Who took shots? Who took shots? Who took shots at them?
Have a
Who
good
took
night,
shots?
you guys. Thanks, Steve.
Who took shots? Oh, he hung up. Who took shots? I never took any shots at anybody there.
I don't know. I don't know, man.
What was that about?
I don't know, man.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Keep
I
going
have
if you
never.
want.
Look, let me ask you another thing. You got invited to the Mr. Lane Appreciation Night 2 nights ago. I did not get an invite. Everybody was there. I did not get an invite, and I don't understand why. I didn't take any shots at anybody. I had nothing to say negatively about anybody.
Well, I'll tell you, I joined the show late because they didn't invite me right away, but I'm not,
I never got an invite. I had my computer open. I was online. I didn't even watch the show.
Did you tweet them?
Yes.
Okay.
I never got an invitation, so I don't know what he is talking about.
I wasn't in charge of that, so I had no control over that, so.
I think I was invited on the Horseman Hangout before you were.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's the beef here. I never said shit to anybody. I never tried to break anybody up. I never caused any grief. Boy, I'll tell you, I am getting sick and tired of being sick and tired of being accused of things that are not
Okay,
true.
let's get back to wrestling.
No, this is bullshit. I don't know what I did. I don't know what he's even talking about. He didn't even stick on long enough to explain himself. He just said what he said and signed off and shut down, and I don't even know what he meant. I honestly don't. So if you're still watching this, and any one of you from that show, and then we'll get back to our program here, but any one of you from the Horseman Hangout, you be our guest next week at this time, or actually whatever the hell we do. We don't even have a set time anymore. Come on the show next week, whether it's Justin or Ryan or Zorzi or Mr. Lane or whomever that feel that they have a beef with me, or I know they don't have a beef with Steven, and I know it's at me. I know it's at me. I know it is. I'll guarantee you it is at me. So whatever, if you have a beef, come on here next week, and we can talk about it like men, and you can explain yourselves, so I can explain myself. So whatever. On to the next thing. Go ahead.
What do you think about Sting sending out this cryptic tweet 7/14, whatever the hell it is?
He's going to WWE headquarters, and he's filming his voice for the video game that John Cena's on the cover of. That's it. Yeah. Although there was some release information regarding a national, like a call. They were calling out any actor who was in good shape. They would be putting on face paint, white face paint.
Right, to look like Sting.
Yes, I read something about this, and it was from WWE corporate. It was a national thing they were trying to do, kind of like a choir, like they did for the Wyatts, like a bunch of people all look like Sting, and they come out there. And this was supposed to happen a month ago or something, and they never did anything. So I think if Sting, here's the thing, if Sting ever comes to WWE, he's not going to tell you about it in a tweet. He's going to show up on Monday Night Raw. If CM Punk ever returns to WWE, which I know he never will, if he ever does, you're not going to hear about it on Twitter. It's going to happen just as a surprise. But the 7-14-14, which all the wrestlers online are joking about it now. I think it only has to do with Sting coming to WWE headquarters to film, to record his voice, and probably body images for action in the matches, or his voice for the show, or both. But he's not going to be on not 2 weeks before a B-level pay-per-view or whatever. No. If he comes back, it's going to be for SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, Survivor Series, one of the big ones. But he's not going to be just in the middle of the summer for no apparent reason. No way.
Right. That's what my thoughts were as well. I figured that it was just going to be for the video game as well.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to come back. I think might make his debut at some point. Who knows? Maybe, I don't know if he's going to ever wrestle again. I don't know if we ever saw another Sting match, who would be against. Now that Brock Lesnar beat the streak, I mean, there was always that rumor of the, dream match between Sting and Taker. I guess you could throw him in there with John Cena.
No, if Sting came back, not back, but if he ever came to the WWE, if he comes to the WWE now, his best program would be with somebody who is there infrequently, like a Jericho, or a CM Punk. Like, Punk comes back, Sting comes back. Or Jericho's there, he has a thing with Jericho. Or I think Sting would really work in a program with the Wyatts, too. Either an enigmatic character, somebody who's a little bit creepy and weird, or somebody who comes back sometimes. Like Jericho comes back, has a thing with Sting, they do a thing for a few months, and they both leave. Something like that. If he ever comes back, it's not going to be full-time. He's not going to be on the road. He's not going to be at house shows. He's not going to be on every pay-per-view. He's not going to be on every week on Raw. He's going to have a Brock Lesnar schedule. He'll be there once a month, if that much.
Right.
Do you ever bite? Let me ask you a question. Did you ever you're eating something and you bite the inside of your lip real bad and it's all cut inside there real bad? You bite your lip. Yes. I did that today. I was at work. One of my employees gave me a little Reese's cup, and I shoved that in there, and I was eating it. One of those small ones, a little nuggety looking one. I shoved it in my mouth, and I'm chomping on it. I bit my lip real bad, and I was just, it hurts like a son of a bitch, doesn't it?
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah. I hate when I do that.
Yes, I did it real bad. In fact, it was from a previous one. I did it a week or so ago, and it finally healed, and then I broke it back open again. Eat that fucking Hershey's or Reese's cup. All right, go ahead.
Got injured eating a Reese's.
I did. I bled hard way right here.
What else to talk about? We talked about Sting.
You had name associations and all this shit. You want to talk about Bobby Heenan?
Now that I was going to do that with Justin, and freaking he got off so damn quick, I couldn't do it.
Let me tell you one more thing about Justin. Okay, I like Justin, and I like Ryan, and I like Mr. Lane, and Mr. Zorzi. I have no problem with that guy. I don't know him. Those other guys I've talked to more. I don't know Mr. Zorzi. Okay, I don't know him. If I've ever said anything to hurt those guys, genuinely, I don't really know what it is, and I hope they would have the testicular fortitude, one of them, to come on the show next week and express themselves. Please do that. I will explain myself. You explain yourself. Honestly, I don't know what I did. I like the DiBiase brothers. They've always been cool to me. I think we have had a lot of laughs over the years online and stuff. I know Ryan gets agitated with me. I get agitated with him. What the hell? Whatever. Best friends do that. Cousins do that. Family does that. I have no problem with those guys. He came on here. He came on here as a representative of Horseman Hangout. That's the first thing he said when he came on. Horseman Hangout, and then he talked a little bit, and then he just said, you guys aren't going to screw with us, and fuck you, and I'm out of here. Without saying fuck you, but he kind of did. So, I don't know. I don't know what the beef is. I don't know what the deal is, and it is whatever. We have those guys on here because they have a platform. It's nice. We don't have any guests yet. Okay? They don't have the time. It's either 3 or 4 of them. So we have them on a few times. I thought it would be a nice idea. They could come on the show. They could talk about their show. We could talk because we are not always invited on their show. So this is an extra of two. This is like a fucking spinoff. I don't see what the problem is. Two guys that were invited on there a few times on their program, having our own spinoff. I think it's not a bad idea.
Well, I don't think it's that. I don't know. I don't know if I don't have any beef with them.
They don't have a beef with you. If anybody has a beef with anybody, it's somebody on that show's got a beef with me. And I told you, our show, O'Reilly Hangout, I wasn't trying to ruin their little relationship. I wasn't trying to spoil things for them. I thought our show was a nice spin-off as two of the guys who are sometimes guests on their program to have our own show.
Right.
It's not like we're going on at 9 o'clock on Tuesdays up against them and sitting there talking a bunch of horse shit. We have our own show. We talk about Impact. They don't talk about Impact on that show because nobody watches it. They talk about Monday Night Raw and fucking baseball. That's it. So our show is something else. We talk about other wrestling stuff. We talk about all wrestling stuff. Mr. Lane could come on our show and talk about every other thing. Well, I don't know if he watches Impact, but he knows his wrestling. We could have. I only had those guys on here as guests. They had us as guests. Now we're doing our spin-off show as two of the extras on their program, and we're having them on as guests too. And it was not meant as a negative thing. And if anybody took it that way, that's just bullshit.
Right.
Every time they're on here, it's not like I'm like, hey, don't talk about what time your show is on. I say, what time is your show on? Tell us what that show's all about.
Right.
So people, and you know who watches these shows? Theirs included. Everybody who's on them. There's not like there's 25,000 views in any of these shows. Nothing. It's fun. Should be some friends sitting around talking about wrestling because we don't see each other. We see each other online. Hey, what's going on? Did you see wrestling this week? That's it. It's not like, hey, fuck their show and all this stupid stuff. We all are wrestling fans, and there's no negativity on my end.
Right.
The Frasier show. Frasier was a spinoff of Cheers, right?
Right.
So they weren't saying on Cheers, or they weren't saying on Frasier like, hey, you know what? Cheers was a bunch of fucking jerk-offs, Or they didn't have, Ted Danson was a guest on Frasier.
Right.
George Wendt was a guest on Frasier. I think every member of Cheers, every cast member on Cheers.
Did they have an episode once on some show where they actually met up in a bar that kind of looked like the set of Cheers or something? I don't know what show it was on. But I know I saw some reunion. It wasn't a reunion on Cheers. It was on a spin-off of one of their shows. It might have been on Becker. I don't know.
George Wendt was the bartender, and Ted Danson as Becker was drinking and bitching to George Wendt, the bartender.
It was on Becker?
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about, though. You're missing my point here. Every member of Cheers, every cast member of Cheers, I think, at least once, was on Frasier. He wasn't having them on there to shit on Cheers. He was having them on because, hey, this is a spin-off of Cheers, and you all were great friends, and it would be fun or funny or interesting to have you on the show. That's it.
Right.
End this fucking story. Go to your next fucking thing here.
What's that?
You know what we say? I said go to your next thing. You know what? We say fuck a lot on this show. You know why? Because I say fuck a lot, and I'm on this fucking show. Now go. Go with your fucking thing you have.
All right. I know you listen to a lot of wrestling podcasts. I know we've talked about what ones we listen to. What is your favorite do you listen to any other than the Podcast One guys?
No. I listen to Jim Ross and Stone Cold, and I've never listened to Jericho, and I've never listened to Goldberg, and those are the only two I listen to is Jim Ross and Stone Cold, and I would like to listen to Jim Cornette, but if all he does is bitch for 2 hours, I don't want to hear that either. But I'll listen to it maybe. Otherwise, that's it.
Right. I listen to a few other ones, non-wrestling, some non-wrestling. I don't listen to that many, but I listen to all the Podcast One guys. Yeah, I've listened to a couple of Goldbergs. They're all right. He hasn't had any wrestlers on there yet. Rowdy Piper's got one on there.
Oh yeah, I listened to Roddy's one episode. It's too. You can't hear it very well because there's too much yelling and everybody talking over each other.
Right.
It's hard to listen.
If he has one person on there with him, I've noticed if he has one person on there with him, he's fine. But
Yeah.
if he has more than one person, it gets too much.
Yeah, too many people talking over each other. Kind of
Yeah,
like the
he
Horseman.
sounds like he's drunk half the time.
Yeah, it sounds like the Horseman hangout.
No. Now.
Fox News.
Fox News?
Right. Yeah, you got 5 people talking over each other every show. It's called the O'Reilly Factor. It is. Watch the O'Reilly Factor on Fox News one time.
I'm all set, man.
You'll have 4 Republicans, or maybe 3 Republicans, a Democrat, and a minority, and everybody's arguing with each other over each other, and it just sounds ridiculous. You can't even understand what anybody's saying.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
Trying to think of what to talk about next.
You told me in his word association you had all these names. Go ahead. I'll talk about them.
Yeah, we already did them. We've already done all the ones I've done. I think. You had a couple, did you?
No. What were you ones? Who's your people you had?
We already did Bobby the Brain Heenan. I think we already did Paul Heyman.
I never talked about Paul. We weren't talking about them.
All right.
I never talked about them. Bobby Heenan, I don't remember if we talked about Bobby Heenan, but I always loved Bobby Heenan. When I was a kid, I thought Bobby Heenan was great. And now that they got the Saturday night's main event on the network now, the first 12 or 13 or so, it's nice to see those. Yeah, it's nice to see old school Roddy Piper and old school Bobby Heenan classics on there. I mean, the shows were good, and sometimes the matches were good, and if you watch it from the first one to straight through, like the first 6 or 7, there's a storyline, certain storylines that carry on.
Right.
Because they were a few months apart, and again, those were days when you didn't have 7 or 8 hours of wrestling on every fucking day.
Now, what was the first main event for that show? Hulk Hogan versus somebody.
Yeah, I just watched all of them the other night, I think. Or half and then half the next day. It was, I think it was Bob Orton and Hulk Hogan, I think.
Bob Orton and Hulk Hogan, huh?
Yeah, because it was right after
Bob Orton have the cast on his hand.
Yeah, it was right after WrestleMania, so they were still off of that feud.
That damn cast, he had that thing on his arm for like 25 years.
Your audio is starting to sound like shit.
My audio's starting to sound like shit?
Yeah, you're starting to sound like a robot. Yeah, Bob Orton had the cast. Yes, it is now. Whatever you were doing before, stop doing that. But yes, he had the cast on his arm forever, and so did Iron Mike Sharp. He had a black cast on his arm for 20 years. And he used to turn it around and smack people in the head with it. And Orton did the same thing.
Yeah. It was just being a good heel back then, you know?
Yeah, they don't know how to do that anymore.
No, it's not that they don't know how to do it, they just don't do it anymore.
I don't think that the writers, who are usually a bunch of, fresh out of Yale or Harvard,
right,
or writing on some dipshit reality show for 6 months, they get a job at WWE and they've never watched wrestling in their life. So then they go into the writer's room and come up with a bunch of stupid stuff to try to make Vince McMahon laugh, and then he just says, I like it, and then they do it. And that's why Damian Sandow comes out dressed as fucking Abraham Lincoln or Bret Hart or some dumb shit, and that's why it is the way that it is now, because they don't know how to write a wrestling show. They're writing a variety show with wrestling matches, and they've done it for 10 years now.
Right. Yeah, but
you watch Ed Ferrara and Vince Russo Raw days. Those were great, and they were great before that. But since those guys left, I'd say the show got shitty about 2004 or 5. Actually, no, the show got shitty when they changed their rating. The show got shitty when they changed their. I would say it got bad about 2007 or 8. That's when it got sometimes unwatchable. And there was a period of time when I didn't watch Raw anymore. It just got too ridiculous.
I've always stuck with it. I'm one of the ones that stick through it. I watch the bad. I take the good with the bad.
No, I did. I mean, I'd see them, but not with the like. If I missed it, I didn't care. I'd catch it, but if I missed it, I didn't care as much. I mean, you had TNA coming up. I was enjoying that. I always watched some wrestling for 30 plus years. But at that point, like, it got to the point where like it just got hard to. It got to be an insult to my intelligence, so I just stopped watching.
But we were talking about Bobby the Brain Heenan. Do you have a special memory, or did you ever get to see the man perform live?
Bobby Heenan?
Yeah.
Yeah, several times. I saw him in Pittsburgh when he was managing.
That's cool.
Mr. Perfect, I think. I don't remember who was there. I've seen him a few times. He came out, and I
might have seen him. I just don't remember it.
I got close enough to the entrance. The way it was just the aisle coming down the aisle. So I stood at that gate,
right,
and they had those metal bar gates, and I reached over and I touched Bobby's arm. I was maybe probably about 13 or 14, I guess. No, I don't know, 14 or 15. I don't know how old I was, but he had some polyester jumpsuit on or something, and I tapped his arm there. So yeah, I saw him live. I always wanted to talk to him because I always thought that Bobby was at his peak in like between 87
he was the greatest manager of my time, I think.
91. Not only that, but I thought he was He was so funny because he would do that primetime wrestling with Gorilla Monsoon or Vince. You remember in that studio, and sometimes it was just two of them at that desk, and they'd talk and they'd show matches from recaps from the weekend, or they'd be in that studio with all those kids of WWE executives sitting in those seats, pretending to be some fans in some cut off little room, and they do silly stuff and do something embarrassing to Bobby, and he'd flop around, and cake and pie, and get smacked or shocked.
Is that the one that he appeared in the pool? Did he appear in a pool of some?
Andre. Andre was on there talking about squashing grapes for wine, and Bobby had a probably a $100 sweater on, pure white sweater, and a pair of dress pants. And Andre made him take his shoes off and dance in the stomp on grapes. And Andre said, "You're not doing it right." And he grabbed Bobby by his foot, pulled him up, and Bobby fell. That sweater was as white as a cloud. I mean, pure white, probably.
I remember it. Yeah.
Cashmere sweater, probably $150 sweater, splashing around in grapes. And then they do shit, dumping buckets of water on his head, and shoving him around. And I guess the point of that primetime wrestling was for the smart ass to make an ass of himself at the end of the show. They'd do something to embarrass him and whatever. It was funny. It was a very variety show, very silly. And remember when Bobby had his own talk show too?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
See, Bobby was very good. Bobby had good comedic timing. He was a great smart ass. I've always appreciated smart asses.
Oh, I mean, he was so great at the commentary position. So great.
But then when he would go to the ring with one of his wrestlers, he was a great worker. He could work that crowd. He could get his guys over more as heels just by being in their corner and yelling at the crowd and telling everybody to shut up and getting involved. And then he'd get
the crowd to calm a weasel.
Yep, he'd get in there and he'd get involved in his guy's match and try to cheat. And the face would grab him and beat the shit out of him, and he'd flop all over the place. His hair would be going everywhere, and he'd jump over the top rope and run his ass off. He was really good at that. Well, he could take bumps. I was watching the other night, and a Junkyard Dog or something was punching the shit out of him and hit him hard one good time, and Bobby flipped head over tea kettle, ass over tea kettle, flopped on the ground and took off. He ran. He was just good at that. He knew how to be. He just knew how to do that. He knew how to be a man, a professional wrestling.
Right. He knew how to bump.
He did, but everything, his facial expressions, his sneakiness, the way he walked. I mean, the guy was a fucking professional. He even said, he was like, you know, everybody talked about how great my promos are.
He was a wrestler. He was a wrestler's wrestler.
That's the thing. He was a wrestler before he was a manager. He wasn't the worst, but he was the best, but he wasn't the worst.
Have you seen any of his matches? I haven't seen any of his matches.
I did. I used to get when I used to go visit my dad in well, my mom and dad got divorced when I was about 10. I used to go visit my old man. He lived in northern Pennsylvania, and on his cable every weekend late at night they used to have they would air old episodes of pro wrestling from Chicago, and it would have like I don't know if you know these names, the Blackjacks, and they would have
Blackjack, Lanza, and Mulligan.
Yeah, the Bruiser and the Crusher, and they would have Seaman Art Thomas and Ernie the Cat Ladd. It was from like 1972. It was pro wrestling from Chicago, and they would have old episodes from the 70s. And this was the 80s, so at that time it was only 10 years old. But now looking back, it's 40 years old, hard to believe. But Dad made me. Dad, when I'd go visit him, we'd watch it on the weekends, and he made me a whole tape of that show. It was full tape. And there was an episode where they had a cage match. It was the Bruiser and the Crusher against the Blackjacks. And Bobby was the Blackjacks manager. And he insisted on being in the cage during that match. And Bruiser and the Crusher took Bobby, and they smashed his head against that cage about 25 times. He had blood pouring all over. And again, he wore it looked like a white jogging suit. It said Heenan on the back. And he had blood, was pouring all over the place. And they threw him again a couple of times, and he'd do the classic Heenan flops. All of a sudden, he turns over and vomited all over the fucking ring. So I don't know why. He just turned over and just puked everywhere. So they said it was hot in the arena that night. He was bleeding everywhere. It probably just made him fucking sick. I don't know.
That's funny. Yeah, I don't think I ever saw Bobby the Brain Heenan live. I think my interaction with Bobby the Brain Heenan was, of course, through my television. You know, I remember watching Bobby Heenan with, managing, everybody, the who's who of wrestling back then.
Yeah, I always enjoyed Bobby. Like I said, when I was a kid, it was Bobby Heenan and Roddy Piper. A lot of the guys in school, because I loved NWA too. I love both. I was one of the few guys who watched both, but a lot of people, it was either Hulkamania or Ric Flair. But for me, I always enjoyed Bobby Heenan and Roddy Piper. So when those two finally had a program together, I was in my glory because it was great.
Right.
But I always appreciated Bobby. He was very smart. He was a smart ass, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could have met Bobby when he was, he doesn't look too good now. I don't know if you've seen pictures of him lately, but he does not look good at all.
I have. I have a hard time. I don't like looking at anything with him of modern day.
Yeah.
I
mean, the last bit that he looked really good was and he even had, the droopiness at the Hall of Fame.
He had tongue cancer. They cut part of his tongue out. He's got part of his jaw removed. He looks like Roger Ebert, the
yes
movie critic. Yeah, that same. I don't think Bobby Heenan smoked cigarettes or did tobacco. I don't know if he did any of that stuff. But
he might have smoked. I don't know.
A lot of people associate smoking with cancer and cancer with smoking. And I don't even know. He had partial cancer in his jaw. He had some jaw taken out. Medically induced coma. He's a frail shell of his former self physically. His wife said he's still a wisecracking as ever. I mean, he can't talk like he once could, but he can write stuff. But she said he hasn't changed a lick. It hasn't. She said he's still a fucking smart ass now, even though he's really sick. But yeah, it's hard to see him like that. But there was an interview online, Bill Apter talking to Bobby Heenan's wife, and she talks about how physically he's not the same, but mentally he's as sharp and as much of a smart ass.
Was that a recent interview with her?
Oh, fuck, that was probably 5 or 6 years ago, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Because if you watch the Bobby Heenan special on the network too.
There is?
Yeah, it's all the stuff we're talking about right now. It's on that. If you go to originals and it's Beyond the Ring series.
Okay.
It has all the documentaries like the Stone Cold one and the Rock one and John Cena and Batista and fucking
Mick
AWA.
Foley.
Yeah, all that. But there's a Bobby Heenan one on there. Watch it. It's only an hour.
If that's the DVD that came out of him, I've probably seen it.
He's got the red sequin jacket and he's pointing at himself.
Yeah. It's the DVD that came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's what's on there. I watched it. I saw it a long time ago on Netflix, I think, and then it's on the network now, so I watched it again. And it was, I think they could have given him more than an hour. You know, they seem to rush it.
I think they could have, if they could have gotten him, they would have had more than an hour. But since they couldn't get him, I don't know.
Let me tell you something. There are certain guys in the wrestling business. Now, do you ever watch that Legends of Wrestling, the roundtable discussion?
Of course, yes, all the time.
I love that. I wish they would make more. I think it's great. Every time they have a new one, I am excited and I watch it.
I wish they haven't made some episodes in a while.
No, but what I mean is they will on the network. If you go to that.
Yeah, I know.
They'll have a new one every week or so. So whenever I see there's a new one on there, I watch it then and there. A new one.
I used to watch them on WWE On Demand. I used to have.
I didn't have On Demand. I don't mean a new episode. I mean whenever they release, because they don't have the whole series of it. So they'll have a fresh one that's from then, like the next episode every so.
I want to say I was a subscriber since 2006, so I'm pretty sure I saw most of them.
Yeah, you probably have, but I didn't. So anytime they have one I hadn't seen yet, I watch it and I really enjoy it. But there was one they had on. There were the first 5 episodes of it. It was like Roddy Piper and Terry Funk, and this one was Hulk Hogan and Iron Sheik, and this one was so and so and so and so. So they have one. It was like focusing on one particular wrestler or 2 particular wrestlers, and then they got into whole categories. But I like that format. I like the program. I think that show is sometimes short because there's guys that are still talking about stuff and they cut and say, well, we got to go till next time. And you can tell they had a lot more stories to tell and they only gave an hour each one.
Yeah, that sucks. Who else did I have? Paul Heyman.
Paul Heyman. You want to know what I think about Paul Heyman?
Yes.
Paul Heyman is he's a genius in regards to his vision of professional wrestling. As far as running a business, and everybody from
Still there?
Yeah, I'm right here. Woo-hoo.
Yeah. Okay. Keep going.
I said Paul Heyman is a genius as far as his wrestling vision, but as far as a business owner or operator, Bully Ray, Bubba Ray Dudley, Tommy Dreamer, all those guys will tell you that he tried to take on too much himself and failed as a result. Right. But as far as what his vision is, if you had a situation, not a Vince McMahon, somebody else who would be willing to take on Paul Heyman as their head of creative, so a wealthy guy who could have a major show on a major network and compete against Vince McMahon, and you have a guy like Paul Heyman who would be in charge of the creative end of the company, not WWE, some other company. He can take that company and his stories alone, and the fact that it could compete against WWE. I think.
Yeah, Paul Heyman's a very good manager. I think he's, like you said, as a business owner, he's not so good. As a manager, he's awesome. he gets his point across, and he gets his person that he's managing over, whether he's a bad guy or a good guy. He helps enhance the product coming out of his clients, I think, or now he calls them clients.
He's great on color. I thought he was great on color when.
Oh yeah, man. My favorite call was that him and Jim Ross at WrestleMania 17. That was one of his better calls.
The fact
that whole show.
The fact that that was a time when Jerry the King Lawler quit WWE, WWF, and Paul Heyman came in and was doing color with Jim Ross.
Yep.
During the invasion angle. Now, the fact that he was one of the managers of the WCW ECW faction company, live. That he was as he was doing their color on their show before he was head of that group, and during the time that he was head of that group, and it ended with Lawler coming back, WWF beating the Alliance, and Heyman getting fired. It was, as much as people shit on the invasion angle, the timing of everything with that was really was good. The timing of it. The fact that they hired Heyman before the invasion angle ever even happened, and he was one of the heads of it, and in the time when Lawler quit, and he could represent the Alliance on the microphone against WWF's Jim Ross. It kind of was, the timing of that was really good.
Yeah, I always liked them on commentary. They were very good. Yeah, Paul Heyman. Back to Paul Heyman. I remember when he got fired. He got dragged out by the security guards. It was great. He got fired by McMahon, and then he brought Jerry Lawler back out. It was awesome. And then he was the SmackDown head writer for a while too, right?
He was, and that was during the SmackDown 6 era. Are you familiar with
Benoit, Guerrero? Yep.
All right, who were they? Who were all 6 of them?
Edge, Benoit, Guerrero, Taker?
No.
No.
Chris Benoit.
Yep.
Edge. Chavo Guerrero. Rey Mysterio. Kurt Angle. Mysterio. Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero. Chris Benoit. Rey Mysterio. Kurt Angle.
Eddie and Chavo.
Yep. Eddie, Chavo, Kurt, Chris. Jesus, who the hell is that? Fire. Anyway, that was it. He pushed those guys to prominence on SmackDown because SmackDown was not.
Jericho?
SmackDown was always. No, it was okay. Kurt Angle.
Might have been Jericho.
Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit teamed. Chavo and Eddie teamed. And Edge and Rey Mysterio. Edge and Mysterio, Chavo and Eddie, Chris and Kurt. That was your 6. Anyway, he pushed those guys to prominence on the SmackDown brand. And it led in 2002 and early 2003 to some of the very best wrestling.
Yep.
I'm not talking about storylines, and I'm not talking about
I know what
angles.
you're saying,
I am saying pure. You watch some of that. And in fact, they're not even. You can't even get those on the net. Well, eventually you will, because they add a few episodes of SmackDown and Raw every so often on the network. But if you ever
it seems to be only the newer stuff.
Yeah, 2002. It was like maybe late summer, the second half of 2002. Man, they tore that shit up. That was the SmackDown 6. Paul Heyman was totally responsible for the SmackDown 6. There was some other stuff on the show too, but that stuff stands out, and I remember that being really, really good. With Paul Heyman had a lot of great ideas. Paul Heyman had ECW. ECW had a great mix of something for everyone. If you watch some of those classic ECW shows, and people talk more about ECW now than they did when ECW was around, which kind of annoys me. It's like they're romanticizing how great something was, and they weren't watching it then. I was. The DiBiase brothers were, I know, especially Ryan. A lot of fans, I know a lot of people who did watch it. My friends and I did. Well, a few of my friends
I
did.
watched what I could of it.
But Paul Heyman, I think if given the right opportunity in the right company, if he still wanted to do it, could book and write the best fucking wrestling show on television, because you'd have a great mix of everything all the time.
Right.
And I think he could definitely, if he could be writing, if Ted Turner got back into wrestling, or if TNA gets huge again, if they ever get huge ever, or anybody, Jeff Jarrett's promotion, anybody, whoever, he should be a guy, not the guy, but a guy writing that, being the head of creative of one particular company.
Right. Yeah. Well,
that really burns me, man. I still don't know what the hell Justin was talking about. I can't get that out of my head now. What the fuck was he talking about?
I don't know, man. I really don't.
If anybody of those four guys that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, you said that.
I know. It's they need to come on here and air their grievance, like men.
Who else do I got for you?
What,
Did you come up with any? You said you came up with a couple. Ask me who you came up with. Must be interesting.
Come up with what? What do you mean? What? About what?
Like a name, what you want to hear about, what my thoughts and opinions of that person is.
All right, Demolition.
Demolition, all right. They were a great tag team. They were, Legion of Doom before they came in. Everybody said they were a Legion of Doom knockoff. I thought they were just as good. Axe, he was a great, that guy's name is what? Bill Eadie is his name?
Yes. Who was he in? He was in WWF before Demolition. Do you know who he was in WWF?
No.
Fucking Masked Superstar. You remember the Masked Superstar?
I think so, yep.
1982, 1983, the Masked Superstar. When I first started getting the...
No, I was born in 84, so I probably don't remember him. No.
Well, I was about 7, and I would go, like I told you before, I would go to the wrestling matches with my dad, and we would go to the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, and the Masked Superstar was one of the heels I remember in that time, and he wore a mask, and he did a flying clothesline running off the ropes, hit the clothesline, he'd do a neck breaker, he'd always work the neck. It was a great program he had with Bob Backlund and Eddie. He died, not Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Gilbert. Eddie Gilbert had a car accident and had a broken neck from the car accident. It was just legitimate. And Eddie Gilbert wore a beard his whole career to cover up the scars from his neck surgeries.
Right.
Masked Superstar took Gilbert and gave him a neck breaker on the concrete floor. He took on Bob Backlund as Bob Backlund was a champion at the time. He took him on. Masked Superstar, that was what Axe was him. He was good. He wore a silver mask and a black singlet, and he was a great heel. And Smash was, who was he after? Who was Smash?
Barry Darso. Well, yeah, that's his real name.
Right.
He was the big top bully, whatever the hell his name is, in WCW. I know that.
Yeah, who else? He was somebody in WWF in like 1992 when WWF.
He was the friggin' Repo Man.
That's right. Yes, that's when WWF really sucked, and I did not watch them anymore. I was watching WCW then, 1992. 1991. Because WWF started to really get lame.
I was always a WWF guy.
I know. All of you guys are. Not me.
Whatever, man. I watched what I could get.
I watched all wrestling, but I know what was good, and I know what appealed to me, and I know what attracted me. And I watched all of it, but I know it was good. But yes, what else about Demolition? What else do you think about Demolition? Do you think Demolition should be in the Hall of Fame? Do you think they are bullshit?
Yes, I think they're Hall of Fame material.
Do you think they will ever be in the Hall of Fame?
I don't know. Maybe if
You
they
wanna hear
get
something?
if they
You wanna
get
hear
down
something?
there on tag teams that they got to put in.
I think they should be in the Hall of Fame, but I think they were an interesting addition to the tag team division because at the time they had a lot of tag teams. There was a time they had a lot of tag teams. It was right before they brought the Road Warriors in. They called them the Legion of Doom.
Yeah.
But Demolition were good. I don't know if they were directly a ripoff of Road Warriors, but it was pretty clear that guys came out to metal music with leather and spikes and had face paint and beat the shit out of everybody. It's pretty obvious that they were a rip-off of the Road Warriors, but Demolition's matches lasted a lot longer than the Road Warriors did. Road Warriors would usually come out there and kick the shit out of two punks for 30 seconds and kill them. Demolition came out and had matches that were pretty longer, a lot longer.
Yeah.
But all in all, they were pretty much a rip-off of that, yes. Okay, who else? What do you think about? Let's see. Who else? What do you think about the Nature Boy Ric Flair?
Wow, that's a good one. Nature Boy Ric Flair. I grew up, I think I got cable in like '94. So this was probably when, right after Hogan left WWF and went to WCW. I started watching, WCW a lot. I watched it a little bit over my grandparents, like I've said, but I didn't watch Monday nights over there. Or, well, they weren't on Monday nights, but I didn't watch every Saturday night, but I watched some Saturday nights. But,
Yeah, you missed out. That's why I keep telling you to watch those clashes, those early clashes of champions on the network. I keep telling you to check them out, and I know you don't.
yeah. I check out some. Sometimes I'm not home to check them out.
Yeah, but it's on demand, so you can watch it anytime.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so you didn't answer my question. What do you think about Ric Flair? You didn't really see a lot of him.
The Nature Boy
Ric
Ric Flair.
You just saw him in
He
WWF.
is, one of the greatest of all times. I've seen matches of his since. I've watched a lot of both of his DVDs. I think he's, like people say he is, he's one of the greatest of all times.
Okay. What do you think about the Fabulous Freebirds?
Fabulous Freebirds. Well, I didn't see much of their stuff, unfortunately. I didn't get that Texas stuff.
They were also in NWA and WCW for a long time.
Yeah.
Did you watch the AWA show on the network, the documentary about AWA?
Yes, I've seen the AWA one.
Did you see the World Class WCCW, World Class Championship Wrestling? It was about.
I believe I've seen that. Yes.
The Von Erichs.
Yeah.
Okay. You asked about Ted DiBiase.
Ted DiBiase, yes.
Yeah. Did you listen to his podcast with Jim Ross on Jim Ross?
Yes, I did. Yeah,
That's quite good, wasn't it?
He was an excellent guest. I've probably told you the story. I've met Ted DiBiase a few years ago.
Yeah.
Great guy. I think I got to see him perform a couple times. Great wrestler. I thought he was, I've seen some of his stuff since the Mid-South stuff. And, he's a great wrestler, before he came to WWE. And he might have been underutilized in WWE a little bit. He was put, he had a great tag team with Mike Rotundo, IRS,
Money Inc.
Money Inc., yes.
Yeah.
With their manager, Jimmy Hart.
Let me ask you a question. If they ever brought Georgia Championship Wrestling or Mid-South Wrestling or Mid-Atlantic Wrestling to the network,
I would watch it, yes.
Would you? You would?
Yeah.
Have you watched any of the the WCCW shows that they have on the network. They're on there now.
They have some on there? No.
Yes, they do.
Good. I'll have to check that out.
What they're making, the only mistake that I would say the network is making. See, like, okay, when they released the Clashes, they gave you the whole series of Clash of Champions, all there. But with some of these other companies that they have, because they have a lot of libraries, okay.
Right.
So with ECW, like they release certain episodes out of order. So anybody who hasn't seen these before, if you haven't ever seen ECW, like if you're a 15-year-old kid or 20-year-old guy, you never watched an ECW, like classic ECW, you get the network. You get ECW from '95 and then ECW from '93. Like they got some of them. They should be in order. They should release like 5 or 6 episodes a week or a month, and in order. So if you watch the first 6, and you watch the next 6, then you watch the next 7 or 8, whatever. And they should release them in order. And that's the same thing they did with the Legends of Wrestling. They released certain ones, and then they went to 2006 episode, they went to a 2008 episode. Everything that they release on the network should start from the start, and then have like maybe so many every month new ones. Right? Don't you think? Because if they ever do have Mid South or Georgia Championship, I didn't get Mid South, and I wished I had when I was a kid. Because I would have watched it, I would have loved it. But we had Georgia Championship, NWA, on my cable when I was a kid. So, I mean, I watched it, but I don't remember a lot of it. I was pretty young. And then when it became NWA, I watched it every week. But just like old episodes of Superstars, man, I don't fucking remember. So if you're gonna try to follow along storylines from 30 or 40 years ago, they should be
in order.
Released. Yeah, don't you agree though?
Oh yeah, it should be in order so you can follow it. How are you supposed to follow something when it's one week it's a show from April 1985, and then the next week it's a show from August 1985.
Right, because there's usually got a story arc going. I mean, it would be like Netflix having, Netflix has a lot of series on there. It would be like them having like some episodes from season 1, then some episodes from season 6, and then some episodes from season 4. You'd be totally lost. What the fuck's going on here? Wrestling should be no different. If you have a network that features professional wrestling shows, most of those are going to be half wrestling and half some situations going on that determine those matches. So, yeah, if they're going to have these libraries, they need to release them in order. And if anybody is watching this, tweet WWE Network, Facebook message them, tell them they need to release their shits in order. Next question.
What do you think about the Nature Boy, Ric Flair? You asked me. What's your thoughts on him?
I think he was great. Was great. And it's a shame what he has become. And somebody was talking about the fact, okay, before I get to the negative, the man was a fucking legend. Thanks to him, the Horseman, Dusty Rhodes, and a handful or two of others, people don't realize this. In 1986,
dream, baby.
Yeah, the pay window, Danny. People don't realize this. In 1986, 1985, 1987, NWA, numbers-wise, considering they were on cable, they had as much airtime on cable as WWF did. They were as hot at that point. People talk about NWO and all this. What people don't realize is that Ric Flair said it himself, if the NWA had stayed in certain key areas like Baltimore, Chicago, Carolinas, Florida, Georgia, if they had stayed in their territory, which by that point the territory system had died off, but NWA had remained strong in key areas in the United States. What people don't realize is in the mid to late 80s, NWA was as hot as a firecracker, and were giving the WWF a run for their money. And they stayed in those areas instead of trying to branch out to Los Angeles and Seattle or Midwest or New York. then they started to falter. They started to lose that audience. But if they had stayed in their key spots and remained hot, then they could have spread out. They do it. You got to take your time to do it. They moved them around, and they lost what made them hot. They lost the audience. If they had stayed where they were good, they would have been great. Ric Flair was one of the faces of that, and he's one of the faces of the professional wrestling business. A lot of people talk about the Mount Rushmore of wrestling. Who's in your Mount Rushmore of wrestling? And I think Ric Flair, anybody who's watched professional wrestling in the last 30 to 40 years would have to consider Ric Flair as one of the faces on the Mount Rushmore. There's no question. I'm not talking about the WWE Ric Flair. I'm talking about classic Ric Flair. The man could cut a promo and tear that audience up. He could have the women screaming. He could have the men pissed off. And he could have every fan in that audience paying to see him get his ass beat by the American Dream or Ricky Morton or Nikita Koloff or whoever. That's good heel because he had his fans while there's heels today that have their fans. He was a guy that had an equal parts fans, but at the same time people would pay to see somebody beat his ass once and for all, and it worked every time. It was brilliant booking, it was brilliant writing, it worked. Nature Boy Ric Flair knew his shit. The guy, let me tell you something else about Ric Flair. In the time of the NWA, when the NWA was the professional wrestling business, as we know, WWF and this and all these the different territories in the 60s, they were all under the NWA banner, the National Wrestling Alliance. And Jim Ross said it. It kind of ran like the mafia. You had the 5 families, but in this case, there were different areas. You had the Northeast was McMahon, the Southeast was Eddie Graham, Midwest was Bill Watts, or Mid-South was Bill Watts. You had the North, Farhat, the original Sheik. You had Don Owen in Portland, Oregon area, in Seattle. You had, I'm talking every area. So if they would vote on who's going to be
Jarrett's in Memphis.
Yes, well, you had who's going to be the world champion, and so they would have a vote, and they voted it when they voted in Harley Race. They voted in, and he would win, or Dusty Rhodes, or Ric Flair. And when the NWA champion was the champion, the way that the territory system ran, and I think this is great. I think this is brilliant. And if WWE today is huge enough today, they could do the same thing. They never would, but it would be great. The NWA champion would travel to the different areas, and it would be like Ric Flair is coming to your town to face your top guy this week. Or he'd go to Detroit, he'd go to Miami, he'd go to Tokyo, he'd go to Los Angeles, he'd go to Mexico, and take on the top dog in that area. So if Ric Flair was coming to your town, you were going to get to see your top wrestler the top wrestler in your area take on the NWA champion. I think that whole system was really, really great. So,
I wish.
Yeah, like you'd see, maybe your guy is going to be the next NWA champion. Yeah, so Flair was a guy who had no problem traveling. He traveled the world over 16, 17 times. He said he was all over the globe. He wrestled everywhere. He'd wrestle the greats in Japan. He'd wrestle the greats in Mexico. He'd go to Canada. You had the Hart. Stu Hart was his version was a can. So, but then what Vince McMahon did was when he just started to expand, and he'd take his TV to their area and buy up their TV time because his ratings were high. He'd buy up their TV time, and he'd suck them all out of business. He sucked them all out of business after promising his dad that he would never be a monopolizer like that, and that's exactly what he did. On his deathbed, he said, "I promise I will be a fair promoter. I will not do that." But the world champion would travel around and defend against the top dog in that region, in that territory. And I think that system would be really interesting. It would be interesting to see if they did that again today. But they will never ever do that again.
Nope. Never will happen.
But Ric Flair did that. If you watch the Flair DVD, he talked about it and where he traveled. He had no problem traveling. He traveled a lot. He defended the title every night. in a different town, and he'd come to your town, and there was a chance that your top guy, like they do that kind of thing now, like the number one contender, Money in the Bank, he can cash it at any time, like that kind of excitement. Fly travel around, maybe see him in your town.
Right. Well, I have no more. I have nobody left for you tonight. I'm all out.
All right. Well, let's call it a night.
Yeah. So for Triple H Guy 2004, for my co-host, the real Mark Golden on Twitter, I'm Triple H Guy at Triple H Guy 2004 on Twitter, and we will. You guys have a good night.
Hey, hold on. Before you end the show, repeat what I said earlier about.
If any of the Horsemen Hangout is currently listening to this program as of right now, if you guys, somebody wants to come on and clarify to the real Mark Golden that if they have a problem with him, come and talk about it on our show. This is an open, I'm sending out the open challenge for anybody in the Horsemen Hangout to come and tell Mark Golden what the issue is with. If there is an issue with you guys, I want it settled, and we will settle it here on the O'Reilly Wrestling Hangout.
Fair enough. That sounds good. Hopefully, somebody has the testicular fortitude to come on here and express themselves, explain themselves. Because I've been, I thought, a fair friend. They have a beef with me. Their problem is their own. I do not have a problem with anyone.
Right. Well, Mark, I'm sorry if if there's a problem, I want it settled, and we will settle it next week. So for at Triple H Guy 2004 and the real Mark Golden on Twitter, we'll see you guys later.
Hey, maybe the problem's with you. You ever think of that? Maybe somebody has a problem with you, Steven.